Research from the University of California reveals that upper-class individuals actually behave more unethically than their lower-class counterparts. But here is what they did not tell you. The behaviors that keep most men trapped in social mediocrity have nothing to do with ethics. They have everything to do with subtlety. While Austin Butler transforms from a Disney Channel actor into Hollywood royalty through meticulous character preparation and refined personal branding, most men sabotage their own ascension without even realizing it. The neuroscience is clear. Social groups across species rapidly self-organize into hierarchies, where members vary in their level of power, influence, skill, or dominance. Yet most men remain oblivious to the fact that status hierarchies at organizational and societal levels affect how individuals perceive social groups and individual others. The difference between Paul Mescal effortlessly commanding respect at every red carpet event and the average man struggling for recognition lies not in talent or luck. It lies in understanding that power, related to one's control over valued resources, transforms individual psychology such that the powerful think and act in ways that lead to the retention and acquisition of power. Social climbing, when done incorrectly, actually signals low status and becomes one of the biggest barriers to becoming genuinely high value. Jacob Elordi did not become a style icon by accident. His minimalist approach to fashion consists of classic pieces that are surprisingly easy to emulate. Yet most men fail to understand the psychology behind his choices. The wealthy and influential operate by a completely different code, but they never announce it. They expect you to know it instinctively. Luxury labels may act as costly signals that enhance status, exactly as proposed by theories of conspicuous consumption, but here lies the trap. People living on a low income often feel low status in society and spend a higher percentage of their money on goods and services that are perceived to have high status. This compensatory behavior immediately reveals your true position to those who truly matter. Here is the brutal truth. If you are still making these 6 critical mistakes, you are broadcasting your outsider status to everyone who matters. But once you eliminate these behaviors, your ascension becomes not just possible, but inevitable. If you want to learn how to transform your presence into power, subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, and give this video a like. Because what I am about to share will separate you from 99% of men who remain invisible to the circles that actually matter. Behavior 1. Obvious social climbing and name-dropping. Social climbers seek to raise their status not by virtue of their qualities, but by attacking, ridiculing, and generally depressing other people's statuses. This is precisely why most attempts at social advancement fail spectacularly. But the deeper issue lies in what researchers call value-taking social climbing. When you walk into a room and immediately start mentioning your connections to important people, you are essentially wearing a neon sign that says, "I do not belong here." The truly wealthy and influential never announce their connections because they assume you already know who they are. Hierarchy is such a defining and pervasive feature of organizations that status and power are two important yet distinct bases of hierarchical differentiation. The most crucial behavior you need to change is not believing in yourself, as doubts and insecurities prevent you from seizing opportunities. But here is the paradox. Overcompensating for that insecurity by name-dropping makes you appear even less confident. People with higher social status tend to express more narcissistic behavior as a function of entitlement and act more selfishly than those of lower social classes. Lewis Hamilton does not walk into a room talking about his Formula One championships. A$AP Rocky does not introduce himself by listing his brand collaborations. These men have mastered the art of confident presence without the need for verbal validation. They understand that psychological power increases the desire for social distance, but reduces the sense of social distance. The amateur mistake is treating every interaction as an opportunity to display your network. Watch how accomplished individuals handle references to their connections. Coleman Domingo never leads with his Emmy nominations or his prestigious theater background. Instead, he lets his genuine interest in others and his natural charisma create the magnetic pull that draws people toward him. The sophisticated approach is to let your knowledge and connections emerge naturally through conversation. When someone mentions art, you might casually reference a piece you saw at a private viewing, not because you want to impress, but because it is genuinely relevant to the discussion. The key is organic integration rather than forced exhibition. Research reveals that social climbing can lead to feelings of emptiness, anxiety, and dissatisfaction when pursued through inauthentic means, as individuals become constantly aware of scrutinizing their actions. Therefore, your goal should be to become genuinely interesting, not to appear impressive through borrowed credibility. But here is the truly sophisticated element. The highest level of social navigation involves what researchers call strategic self-presentation. This means understanding that every interaction is an opportunity to build genuine relationships rather than extract value. The moment you stop trying to prove you belong is the moment you actually start belonging. But there is another behavior that sabotages your efforts even more subtly. Behavior 2. Poor conversation skills and social awkwardness. The Debrett's Guide reveals something crucial about elite conversation. Small talk is not meaningless chatter, but a valuable tool for social interaction that smooths the path when meeting someone new. Yet most men approach conversations like interrogations or monologue, missing the sophisticated dance entirely. Understanding social hierarchy psychology becomes essential here, because we constantly navigate the invisible currents of social hierarchy in every interaction. When participating in group conversations, the rule is to share and ensure everyone is included. Watch Coleman Domingo at any industry event. His red carpet style extends beyond clothing to his conversational elegance, where he adds his own twist through bold confidence and unexpected insights. He never dominates conversations, yet he commands attention through thoughtful engagement. This demonstrates how status conveys competence, although it tends to trade off against lower warmth in interpersonal interactions. The amateur mistake is asking direct questions like, "What do you do?" or "Where are you from?" These were traditionally viewed as too direct in sophisticated circles, so the ideal approach is to be more reserved. Research shows that power and status create psychological distance, conferring agency at the top and requiring deference at the bottom. Therefore, skilled conversationalists understand how to navigate these dynamics without appearing either subservient or dominant. Good eye contact and a ready smile animate any conversation, while the secret is giving the other person an easy opportunity to respond. Therefore, instead of asking, "What is your business?" you might comment, "This venue has such interesting architecture. I imagine the acoustics make events here quite memorable." This approach demonstrates cultural sophistication while creating space for natural dialogue. Avoid interrogating or giving the impression you are trying to label someone based on where they live or how much they earn. The goal is not to extract information, but to create a pleasant, shared experience. Social hierarchies are resilient, but they can shift, and understanding those change processes is crucial for meaningful conversation. Notice how Stanley Tucci, named the best-dressed man of the year, engages in interviews. He never rushes to fill silence. He listens actively, and he builds upon what others say rather than waiting for his turn to speak. His approach demonstrates what researchers call social sensitivity, the ability to read and respond appropriately to social cues and power dynamics. The sophisticated individual also understands the art of graceful transitions. If someone joins you during a deep conversation, you must interrupt it to include the newcomer and make them feel welcome by changing the subject. This level of social awareness separates the refined from the rough, because it shows you understand that social interactions are about collective comfort rather than personal agenda. But here is the advanced technique that most miss: the ability to create what psychologists call conversational equity. This means ensuring that everyone in the group feels valuable and heard, regardless of their apparent status. The truly sophisticated person elevates others through conversation rather than using dialogue to elevate themselves. But even perfect conversation cannot save you from the next critical error. Behavior 3. Inappropriate dress and grooming standards. High society places value on thoughtful attention to detail and awareness of social norms, where understanding proper dress codes serves as a pillar in the complex structure of refined manners. Yet most men treat clothing as functional rather than communicative, missing the profound psychological impact of proper presentation. What they fail to understand is that luxury labels may act as costly signals that enhance status, but only when deployed with sophisticated restraint. The best-dressed men of 2024, including Paul Mescal and Austin Butler, understand that suits must fit like a glove while maintaining effortless sophistication. But here is what they will not tell you. It is not about expensive brands. It is about understanding the language of clothing. Research shows that constantly wearing or name-dropping luxury brands is a telltale sign of new money, while those from established wealth often prioritize timeless style and quiet elegance over obvious logos. Traditional etiquette includes men removing their hats indoors, particularly in someone's home or at formal events. These seemingly small details communicate respect and cultural literacy. When you miss these cues, you broadcast your outsider status instantly. The difference between old money and new money becomes apparent here. Old money thinks classic, timeless pieces with labels that are not displayed prominently, while new money puts designer logos and statement pieces front and center. The sophisticated man understands that clothing is armor and advertisement simultaneously. Henry Cavill excels at dressing well by getting clothes tailored to his extremely muscular frame, understanding that fit trumps everything else. Therefore, a perfectly fitted mid-range suit will always outclass an expensive suit that hangs poorly. This principle extends beyond clothing to every aspect of personal presentation. But here is the deeper psychology: extroverted personalities drive low-income individuals to purchase more luxury goods, most likely to compensate for a perceived low social status. This compensatory consumption immediately reveals financial insecurity to those trained to recognize these signals. The truly wealthy understand that obvious luxury signals desperation rather than success. Andrew Garfield has impeccable personal style that appears effortless, yet every detail is deliberately chosen. The goal is not to look like you spent hours preparing, but to look like excellence is your natural state. This requires understanding the difference between what researchers call loud luxury and quiet luxury. Consumers with less experience in luxury prefer loud luxury products with more prominent brand identifiers, while sophisticated individuals choose quality and craftsmanship over logos. Your grooming extends beyond clothing to encompass what psychologists term non-verbal status cues. Upper-class manners include conducting oneself with restraint and poise in public settings, not drawing undue attention through unseemly behavior. This means your grooming should enhance your natural features without appearing artificial or overdone. Your scent should be discovered, not announced. Your grooming should be flawless, but never obvious. Your clothing should fit so well that people notice you, not your outfit. The ultimate sophistication lies in creating what luxury experts call effortless elegance, a presentation so refined that it appears completely natural while being entirely intentional. But even perfect presentation cannot compensate for the next behavioral flaw that immediately reveals your social standing. Behavior 4. Lack of cultural capital and intellectual depth. Education equips individuals with cultural capital, including knowledge of social norms, etiquettes, and languages prevalent in higher social classes, enabling them to fit in more seamlessly. Yet most men approach culture like tourists rather than residents. consuming rather than understanding. The psychology behind this reveals something crucial. Cultural capital is not about snobbery, but about having enough intellectual breadth to connect meaningfully with accomplished people. Avoid topics like religion and politics, and do not talk about work with people who are not colleagues. But what do you discuss instead? The sophisticated man draws from a deep well of cultural knowledge, art, literature, travel, philosophy, and current events that transcend mere headlines. This demonstrates what researchers call intellectual sophistication, the ability to engage with complex ideas while making them accessible to others. When Donald Glover appears at events, he always dresses to the nines, but his true power lies in his ability to discuss music theory, television writing, social commentary, and comedy with equal fluency. This intellectual breadth makes him magnetic in any room because he understands that social power is not just about control over resources, but about the capacity to influence others through knowledge and insight. People generally indicate their interests naturally, so avoid making direct inquiries while still finding common ground through indirect questions. Therefore, instead of asking, "Do you read?" you might mention how a recent book challenged your perspective on leadership, creating space for literary discussion. This approach demonstrates what social psychologists call conversational sophistication, the ability to create meaningful dialogue without appearing intrusive or agenda-driven. The amateur talks about sports scores and weather. The sophisticated man discusses how architecture influences social behavior, why certain artists command astronomical prices, or how travel changes one's perspective on human nature. But here is the critical distinction. This is not about showing off knowledge, but about genuinely engaging with ideas that matter. Trying to be controversial on purpose is merely exhibitionism, while trying to be better than others is disagreeable and makes you appear insecure rather than impressive. The goal is not to demonstrate superiority, but to engage in mutually enriching dialogue. Research shows that people who engage in intellectual posturing often reveal their insecurity rather than their sophistication. But here is the advanced element that separates the truly sophisticated, the ability to make complex ideas accessible without dumbing them down. Stanley Tucci exemplifies this when discussing food, wine, or travel. He never condescends, yet he makes sophisticated topics approachable. This requires deep understanding combined with empathetic communication. The truly refined individual also understands cultural context and timing. You do not discuss philosophy at a sporting event, nor do you analyze art technique during casual conversation. Social intelligence involves reading the room and adapting your intellectual engagement to the appropriate level and context. Cultural knowledge becomes powerful when it serves connection rather than separation. The goal is to find intellectual common ground that enriches the interaction for everyone involved, but cultural knowledge alone cannot overcome the next critical weakness that undermines everything else. Behavior. 5. Poor table manners and dining etiquette. Understanding the use of various utensils, serving in specific order, passing dishes in particular directions, and adhering to table manners like keeping elbows off the table are all basic requirements. Yet dining etiquette reveals character more than any other social interaction because it cannot be faked under pressure. What most men fail to understand is that dining situations create what researchers call micro-hierarchies, where competence and sophistication are constantly evaluated. When serving coffee, it should be presented on a tray in cups with saucers and teaspoons, while mugs should only be used in informal situations. These details matter because they demonstrate cultural literacy and respect for tradition. But the deeper principle involves understanding what psychologists term ritualized social behavior, actions that signal membership in sophisticated circles through adherence to unspoken protocols. At formal dinners, the host should assume command and be the person who deals with restaurant staff, while guests should demonstrate moderation when ordering. Notice how this creates a social hierarchy based on competence rather than aggression. The sophisticated individual understands that dining situations offer opportunities to display what researchers call social capital, the ability to navigate complex social protocols with ease and grace. The sophisticated diner never draws attention to their eating. They do not photograph their food, they do not discuss dietary restrictions extensively, and they do not make elaborate compliments about obvious dishes. Guests should choose reasonably quickly and simply state their selection without engaging in lengthy dialogue with servers. This restraint demonstrates what etiquette experts call sophisticated self-control. If something goes wrong, complaints should be made politely but firmly, with poorly cooked food or spoiled wine mentioned immediately. But as a guest, you accept the host's choices with grace, never criticizing selections or making scenes. This demonstrates understanding of social hierarchy and your position within it. Watch how executives dine during business meetings. They order efficiently, eat neatly, and focus on conversation rather than consumption. The meal becomes a backdrop for relationship building, not the main event. This approach demonstrates what business psychologists call strategic dining, using food situations to build connections rather than simply consuming nutrition. Wine selection typically goes to the person perceived as the host, who should consult others while maintaining control rather than allowing guests to dominate the process. This reveals how true power operates through competent leadership rather than aggressive dominance. The sophisticated individual understands that these moments test your ability to balance authority with collaboration. But here is the advanced element: understanding international dining protocols. The way you handle chopsticks in an Asian restaurant, your knowledge of proper bread etiquette in French settings, or your ability to navigate complex Indian dining customs all signal your worldliness and cultural sophistication. These details matter because they demonstrate what anthropologists call cross-cultural competence. Your ability to navigate complex dining situations signals your readiness for boardrooms, exclusive clubs, and high-stakes social events. The truly sophisticated individual makes everyone at the table feel comfortable while demonstrating their own competence through subtle mastery of these protocols. But there is one final behavior that can destroy everything else. Behavior 6. Attention-seeking and lack of discretion. In Monte Carlo, discretion is not just a choice, but a way of life, where loose lips sink yachts, and what happens there stays there. Yet most men approach social situations like reality television, broadcasting every experience and connection. What they fail to understand is that the advent of social media has revolutionized wealth signaling, creating new forms of conspicuous consumption that immediately reveal social inexperience. Social climbing can lead to feelings of emptiness, anxiety, and dissatisfaction when pursued through inauthentic means, as individuals become constantly aware of scrutinizing their actions. Therefore, the need to document and announce every social victory actually signals insecurity rather than success. Research shows that influencers strategically showcase their luxurious lifestyles to attract followers who aspire to emulate their lifestyle. But this approach backfires in sophisticated circles. The truly well-mannered person is one who does not notice the mistake, not the one who made it. This principle extends to all social interactions. The sophisticated individual protects others' dignity rather than exploiting their vulnerabilities. Understanding this requires grasping what psychologists call social grace, the ability to maintain others' comfort even when they make errors. Pharrell Williams, now creative director of Louis Vuitton menswear, never publicizes his private interactions with industry titans. His power comes from being trustworthy, discreet, and genuinely interested in others rather than in what they can do for him. This demonstrates what researchers term authentic relationship building versus transactional networking. Revealing secrets is wrong, and discretion is essential, while delighting in bad news shows poor education. The man who gossips about others will inevitably gossip about you, making him dangerous company for anyone with a reputation to protect. Social hierarchy research reveals that gossip can be used as a weapon to maintain or challenge status positions, but sophisticated individuals avoid this entirely. Conducting oneself with restraint and poise means not drawing undue attention or behaving in ways considered unseemly. This includes social media behavior, where constant posting about exclusive events signals desperation rather than belonging. The psychology here is clear: people who truly belong do not need to prove their membership through constant documentation. The ultimate sophistication is being present without needing to prove your presence. When you attend an exclusive event, the goal is to build relationships and enjoy the experience, not to create content for validation. This requires understanding what social psychologists call intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, finding satisfaction in the experience itself rather than in others' reactions to your experience. True aristocrats never show defeat, maintaining composure regardless of circumstances. This emotional regulation extends to all situations. You neither celebrate too enthusiastically nor complain too bitterly. You remain consistently elegant. This demonstrates what researchers call emotional sophistication, the ability to maintain appropriate affect regardless of circumstances. But here is the advanced principle that most miss entirely: the art of strategic invisibility. The most powerful people often operate behind the scenes, influencing outcomes without drawing attention to themselves. They understand that true power lies not in being seen, but in being effective. The sophisticated individual also masters what etiquette experts call graceful deflection, the ability to redirect attention away from themselves when appropriate, while still maintaining their presence and influence in the situation. To climb the social ladder, it is crucial to adopt a financially responsible approach, living within your means while saving smartly and making wise investments. But financial discipline alone cannot overcome these 6 behavioral barriers to elite acceptance. What research reveals is that status hierarchies at organizational and societal levels affect how individuals perceive social groups, and your behavior within these hierarchies determines your trajectory. The neuroscience is unforgiving. Social groups across species rapidly self-organize into hierarchies, and power transforms individual psychology such that the powerful think and act in ways that lead to the retention and acquisition of power. Therefore, eliminating obvious social climbing, mastering sophisticated conversation, maintaining impeccable presentation, developing genuine cultural depth, demonstrating dining competence, and practicing absolute discretion are not suggestions. They are requirements for entry into circles that matter. The complexity of social climbing becomes evident when considering the interplay between personal desires, societal pressures, and moral considerations. Research shows that luxury labels may act as costly signals that enhance status, but only when deployed with sophisticated restraint. The amateur displays wealth to signal belonging. The sophisticated individual signals belonging through competence, character, and cultural fluency. But here is what separates the truly elite from the merely wealthy: understanding that hierarchies in the correlated forms of power and status are constants that organize human societies, but they can shift. The men who master silent ascension understand that status conveys competence, although it tends to trade off against lower warmth in interpersonal interactions. Therefore, the goal is not to appear powerful, but to become genuinely powerful through the development of authentic capabilities. Remember, fashion is not luxury, it is power. But power without wisdom is merely noise. The sophisticated man builds his influence through what researchers call multidimensional status acquisition. combining financial resources with cultural capital, social intelligence, and authentic relationship-building skills. This approach creates what psychologists term sustainable high status, rather than the fragile positioning that comes from surface-level signaling. The psychological research is clear. People with higher social status tend to express more narcissistic behavior, but this creates a trap. The moment you begin to act entitled rather than grateful, competent rather than learning, closed rather than curious, you begin your descent. True aristocrats understand that high status requires constant refinement, continuous learning, and genuine contribution to others. Your silent ascension begins the moment you stop announcing your intentions and start embodying your aspirations. The elite are watching, but they will never tell you the rules. Now you know them, but knowledge without application is merely entertainment. The transformation requires what behavioral psychologists call deliberate practice, conscious, consistent application of these principles until they become instinctive. Start with eliminating one behavior per week. Begin with the most obvious stop name dropping entirely for 7 days. Notice how this forces you to develop more interesting conversation. Then focus on improving your conversation skills practice, asking better questions, and listening more intently. Move through each behavior systematically, understanding that mastery requires time and patience. Master these principles, and watch how the world begins to treat you differently. Because in the end, respect is not demanded, it is commanded through excellence that speaks for itself. The sophisticated man understands that true power lies not in being seen, but in being effective, not in talking about influence, but in wielding it with wisdom and discretion. The psychological reality is that status hierarchies are resilient, but they can shift when you understand the underlying principles. Your ascension becomes inevitable when you align your behavior with the expectations of those who already occupy the positions you desire. This is not about changing who you are. It is about becoming the most sophisticated version of yourself. If this video helped you understand the invisible barriers to social elevation, make sure to subscribe for more insights into the world of true masculine sophistication. The next video will reveal the 3 conversation techniques that make influential people remember you long after you leave the room, plus the subtle body language cues that signal high status without saying a word. You will not want to miss it.